So beyond evaluating individual companies, there's also the broader environment that shapes how innovation develops. So how does regulation shape innovation in biotechnology and healthcare?
That's a that's a great question. I think for us, for my group in particular, we sort of have three areas that we operate at the intersection of. One is the intellectual property itself. The other is all the corporate transactional aspects of putting a deal together. And then the third is just what you've said, is the regulatory aspect. And a lot of groups out there do the first two very well, but there are very few groups out there that really bring in the trifecta of having the regulatory group as well. So we have attorneys in our group that focus in particular on FDA regulatory law. And regulation at its foundation is one of the most powerful forces that's currently shaping what gets developed and commercialized and how it does so. So the FDA approval pathway really determines what data you need. It determines how long development takes. And ultimately, it determines what your potential commercial opportunity looks like. So that, in effect, ends up shaping capital allocation. So investors will typically follow the pathways where there is the most regulatory clarity. And in particular, right now, areas like cell and gene therapy are attracting enormous investment opportunities, partly because the FDA has signaled how it will evaluate these technologies. Regulation isn't just a set of rules that you have to comply with after the science is done. It's a strategic input that you need to really be considering from day one.
And looking ahead, as new technologies continue to emerge, now we're in such an AI era. As AI becomes more involved in scientific discovery, what kinds of legal questions start to emerge?
Yeah, this is a great question. It's a really foundational one with respect to inventions. So patent law requires a human inventor, someone who's conceived of and claimed a particular invention. And AI creates challenges here. So if an AI system identifies a compound, optimizes a molecule, or generates a novel hypothesis, who is the inventor? In the US, under US law, AI can't be a named inventor. But
Mhm.
the practical assessment is actually quite a bit harder. What did the human actually contribute? What questions did it ask to focus the results that are being generated by the AI? And is that contribution really sufficient to establish inventorship for the individual involved? We're also seeing questions around ideas of ownership of AI generated data sets, trade secret protection for proprietary models, and how to disclose AI contributions in both patents and publications. I think these questions are ultimately going to end up being litigated, and the outcomes of those litigations are going to be what shapes how the entire field documents and manages AI-assisted discovery. But I think a good practice tip for the here and now, while we wait for those, black and white lines to be drawn, is I think as inventors are working through the invention and discovery process, I think you really want to make sure that you are documenting what roles the human inventors are playing throughout the process. That's going to be important for any potential downstream ownership or litigation that you might end up in as an emerging company.